Dark Knight's Metal reunites Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo in their most ambitious project yet. Does it fall flat, or does it hold up to, maybe even surpass their stupendous New 52 Batman run? Let's find out. Eduardo here, and welcome to our first Nerdcore review. Today we're talking about the next big thing coming out of DC, Dark Knight's Metal #1. Let's start with the art. This issue was drawn by Greg Capullo, with inks by Jonathan Glapion and colors by FCO Placencia. As usual, Capullo leaves me impressed. He continues to be one of my favorite artists, and this issue further solidifies that. I spent plenty of time on each page, marveling at all the detail, which to me is what comics should have you doing. One tiny problem I would occasionally have with Capullo's art during the New 52 Batman run was that faces seemed out of proportion sometimes, particularly the noses. They were always kind of big in my opinion, but I have no such complaint with this issue. Coloring is also pretty amazing, and it does a good job at establishing the tone on each page. I also want to point out that the main cover by Capullo has Justice League in a formation which seems to be a hand making the Rock On sign, and I think that's pretty awesome considering the story is called Metal. And if anybody from DC is out there watching this video right now, give this man his own regular series again, because I personally would love to keep seeing more art from Capullo once Metal's all done. On to story. Scott Snyder has accustomed us to some great writing over the years, and this issue is no exception. Right off the bat, we're treated with something which seems like it's from the mind of a child, and I mean that in a good way. It's fun, it's imaginative, it's a freaking Justice League Megazord. 10-year-old me would love it, and current me really loves it. I should backtrack and explain how we get this, though. The issue starts off with the League trapped in a coliseum on Mongul's new war moon. Here they are pitted against robots which the Toyman was forced to make. There's a twist, though. Each member of the League is fashioned with an armor specifically made to neutralize their individual powers. For example, Superman's armor contains dust from crushed red suns, and Wonder Woman's contains a lock infused with venom from the Elder Gorgon. The combination of the Toyman's robots and this special armor makes it seem like defeat is inevitable for the League, but leave it to Batman to figure a way out. It turns out that the Toyman double-crossed Mongul and planted buttons in his robots, which when pressed absorb the League members and allow them to form the Megazord I mentioned earlier. They then defeat the Mongul and head back to Earth, where the more Nth Metal related events in the book begin. Before I talk more plot, I want to mention the Flash humor. Flash seems to be mainly used for comic relief in this issue. My brain usually goes to hell when I think of comic relief in a Justice League book, but Barry served that role well. Like at one point, he references old Hook Hand Aquaman from the 90s, which I loved. I loved the joke, not the Hook Hand. The Hook Hand was pretty bad. I found myself laughing at a lot of the lines. It actually kind of feels like that's what they'll be going for with Ezra Miller's Flash in the DCEU. Speaking of the DCEU, Aquaman is also drawn with longer hair in this issue, something I believe is happening in his solo series too. To me, this seems like DC is making slight changes in the comics to match their cinematic universe, like Marvel did with Star-Lord. In this case, it's more subtle changes, as all they do is give Arthur the longer hair of Jason Momoa's Aquaman. Back to the story though. The first issue of Metal mainly serves as setup, which isn't surprising. We learn a little more about the Dark Multiverse from Kendra Saunders, aka Hawkwoman. She explains that while there are only 52 universes in the DC Multiverse, they all float on like an ocean of dark matter. This is the Dark Multiverse, from which the threats of this event arise. Kendra reveals that one of these threats is Barbados, a demon which I believe was last seen during Grant Morrison's Batman run. She also reveals that it is Bruce who will open the door to the Dark Multiverse, setting Barbados free. It's because of this that Kendra and her Blackhawk squadron attempt to ambush Batman in the midst of the revelation. Batman, being Batman though, was ready for this, and he reactivates Red Tornado, who freaks out and causes chaos, allowing for his escape on a raptor. Yes, you heard that correctly. A raptor, isn't a dinosaur. I love it. Also, Red Tornado, you heard that correctly too. I, for one, think Red Tornado is a great character, and I'm glad to see him being put to use in this story. We actually find out that Red Tornado was part of the team sent into the Dark Multiverse by Carter Hall, Hawkman. Red Tornado later shows up in a stasis pod with the rest of the expedition group. Did I mention the pod was in a mountain, which suddenly reappeared from the Dark Multiverse in the middle of Gotham? Weird stuff, I know. Okay, well, having seen the Dark Multiverse and its terrors, Red Tornado is convinced that the door to that place must never be reopened, hence his freak out upon reactivation. To me, this moment is some of Snyder's best writing in the issue. It highlights what Batman always tries to be, a loner. In his quest to protect the world, Batman leaves the League behind and escapes the Blackhawk facility with a piece of pure Nth Metal. Batman continues to keep everyone in the dark, hoping to protect those around him, but perhaps also because there's no one he can trust to carry out this mission more than himself. The final act of this issue takes place in the Batcave, where we get a huge moment. Essentially what happens is that the pure piece of Nth Metal reacts with its surroundings and reveals a journal of Carter Hall was in Wayne Manor all along. The journal contains all the information on Nth Metal and the Dark Multiverse gathered by Hawkman throughout his long life. We find out that Hawkman entrusted this journal to the Wayne family, as they are the family he claims to trust the most. As Bruce begins to inspect the journal, we are left with perhaps the issue's biggest reveal, the character Dream from Neil Gaiman's Sandman comics. Dream appears behind Batman to tell him that the nightmares have only just begun. It seems that Snyder has some big plans for this character, but we'll have to wait for the next issue to see what his connection to Metal in the Dark Multiverse is. What I do know is that something pretty huge is going to happen if a character with the power of Dream has to get involved, and Snyder himself has said that he's essential to some key elements in the story. Overall, this issue has a story that's fun on the surface, but also has deeper mysteries and connections to other characters I can't wait to uncover. Capullo's art is as strong as always, especially with Placentia's colors, adding to the impressive scope of the book. I give Dark Knight's Metal #1 a final rating of 9 Raptors out of 10. Now for the other issues in this week's Comics Haul. First up, we have Batman #29, written by Tom King with art by Mikel Janin. This issue continues the story of the War of Jokes and Riddles. With neither faction backing down, Batman may have to choose the lesser of two evils if he wants the violence to end. Will he embrace the murderous anarchy of the Joker or the bloody fascism of the Riddler? If he wants to win, he'll have to choose a side, and either way, he loses. Finally, we have Spider-Man 2, issue number 2 by Brian Michael Bendis with art by the wonderful Sarah Pichelli. The mystery of the other Miles Morales thickens, but our Spider-Man may need to hit the pause button on sleuthing because Taskmaster is going to take them down. That's it for this week's review in Comics Haul. Be sure to subscribe if you enjoyed my rambling, and I'll see you next time here at the Nerd Core.